10's Late News with Sandra Sully.
Tonight, a young Australian's dramatic plea, guilty to killing a British baby. Cheaper phone calls on the way as Telstra is told to play ball with its competitors. And incredible scenes as a rescue mission takes a terrible twist. Good evening. First tonight, a dramatic change of plea in the British trial of Australian nanny Louise Sullivan. She now admits responsibility for the death of a 6-month-old baby in her care.
For months, the Sydney nanny has denied she hurt the baby, but at the start of her trial at London's Old Bailey, a stunning about-face, finally admitting she was the killer.
She's been a loving nanny, and then this catastrophic event took place, and she will only know the reason.
27-year-old Louise Sullivan hesitated and then pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of involuntary manslaughter. Sullivan says she was minding baby Caroline Yongan at a North London home 9 months ago when the infant began convulsing. She panicked and adopted the shake and shout method she'd learned through first aid. Police say the baby was shaken for up to 10 seconds, long enough to suffer massive brain damage. She died in her mother's arms in hospital. Sullivan now says she was grossly negligent. I sort of may have shook her a little bit, but she said she loved the infant. Caroline was the sweetest little girl I ever looked after. She was the Yongan's only child.
She could be looking at a custodial sentence.
In Sydney, Louise Sullivan's qualifications and experience as a nanny were never questioned.
At the time she was untrained, and I knew that, but she seemed to really care for the children, and she did everything I asked her to do, and she seemed to do it well.
Ms Lonsdale hopes the British justice system will treat Sullivan's time already served as punishment enough. The case is being seen as a tragedy all round. The nanny's fate will be known in a fortnight. Sean Fewings, 10 News.
The war on the waterfront could explode again, with Patrick Stevedores taking legal action against the Maritime Union of Australia. Patrick says more than 100 of its wharfies did not turn up for work on New Year's Eve. The company will ask the federal court to impose penalties, which could result in a maximum fine of $10,000 for each offence. Last year, Patrick's was embroiled in a bitter 5-month dispute with the Maritime Union of Australia over work conditions. The cost of phone calls is coming down. Telstra has been told to cut some charges by up to 20%.
It's a decision set to reduce the $5 billion we spend annually on long-distance and overseas calls. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission has found Telstra is overcharging competitors for access to its phone network.
The price has been too high, too long. It reflects a position of tremendous market power which has not been to the benefit of Australian consumers.
Despite being told it's overcharging by twice the amount considered fair, the ruling has Telstra on the defensive.
We're surprised, disappointed and somewhat bewildered, to be honest. We believe the prices that we are charging our competitors currently are fair prices.
Professor Fells predicts the change will cut the price of long-distance and overseas calls by 15%.
The economics of making long-distance and international calls is now coming into reach of the ordinary consumer.
It's still uncertain when the price change will come into effect, but it may take several months. Telstra may choose to negotiate a new charge with its rivals, or may be forced into change by the ACCC. And there'll be a spin-off for mobile phone users, with Professor Fells predicting a slight drop in charges. Tim Mitchell, 10 News.
Crisis talks today aimed at salvaging the Olympic image. Organisers of the Sydney Games are determined not to let the IOC corruption scandal scare off sponsors.
Laughter disguises the tension bubbling beneath a scandal pushing an ancient sporting institution towards the brink of ruin.
I think our reputation in the International Olympic Committee has been damaged.
Australian International Olympic Committee board member Kevin Gosper had just been briefed by the heads of the Sydney Games Organising Committee. Mr Gosper told to relay Sydney's concerns about how $230 million sponsorship dollars could be jeopardised by bribery allegations against IOC delegates.
With corporate sponsors, we're taking other steps to make sure that they're in the picture.
The Sydney Organising Committee also demanded the immediate dismissal of any IOC delegate paid to vote for Salt Lake City's successful bid to stage the 2002 Winter Games. SOCOG also wants the IOC's administration and the bidding process overhauled.
Well, I think that the Sydney interest and the IOC interest are the same in the final analysis.
As the head of the IOC's media relations, Mr Gosper plays a key role in maintaining the image of the Games, but he flies to Switzerland having to juggle Sydney's demands for more openness with the Olympic movement's need for damage control.
I feel quite comfortable in the role. Everything that I've been asked to convey is consistent with my own views.
IOC members have been blasted for their expensive taste during visits to bidding cities, but at today's crisis lunch, Australian delegate John Coates made it quite clear that lobster was now off the menu.
I'm hoping the sandwiches will be up to standard.
Adam Walters, 10 News.
Australian Open tennis champion Peter Korda is under siege tonight. More players calling for tougher action against him over a positive drug testing.
For Peter Korda, a day of agonies on the court.
He's got ice on it immediately.
And offered two as he found himself in the sights of yet another top seed.
And I don't hold a grudge against him. You know, he claims to be innocent, but, you know, in light of the test, it appears he's not.
Jim Courier's outburst, hot on the heels of one from our own Pat Rafter, furious that despite testing positive to steroids, Korda has not been expelled.
And I think that should be the case, unless Peter's got a bloody good explanation, and we didn't hear it.
With the toughest message of all delivered after Korda's Open win today, Spaniard Galo Blanco refusing to shake his hand. Meantime, also in the hot seat, our own Pat Cash.
I don't know whether he's making these comments in the interest of Pat Cash, because he's certainly not making them in the interest of tennis, and he's certainly not making them in the interest of Mark Philippoussis.
Mr Kennett was returning fire after Cash reignited the ongoing feud between Mark Philippoussis and Davis Cup captain John Newcombe. But Cash's star pupil was not buying into the row.
This is a Grand Slam. Nothing is going to disturb my concentration or steer me in another direction.
Tracy Chamberlain, 10 News.
There's still plenty to come in tonight's late news, including Mick Jagger's shock marriage claim. Also, terrifying twisters leave a trail of misery and mayhem. And one disaster after another as a rescue mission goes horribly wrong. You're watching 10's Late News. A police car and garbage truck collided tonight in Sydney's northwest. A 48-year-old sergeant driving the car has neck and shoulder injuries and was airlifted to hospital from the crash scene at North Richmond. Investigators say the policeman is lucky to be alive. The truck driver was not hurt. Thousands of Muslims turned out in Sydney today to celebrate the end of Ramadan. After a month of fasting, it was time to feast and party.
Sunrise this morning, and for thousands of Muslims, it signals the end of the holy month of Ramadan and the beginning of its 3-day celebration.
This day is a day of peace and happiness for all Muslims.
After 30 days of fasting, 30,000 worshippers converged on the mosque in Sydney's Lakemba to pray.
USA is bigger than the USA. I mean, I'm here on a visit, you know, the holiday, you know, but it's big. It's bigger than what we have.
Ramadan restricts Muslims from eating, drinking even water or any form of gratification between sunrise and sunset, and is a time for reflection, cleansing and forgiveness.
Life is about more than just Levi jeans, Melrose Place and Big Macs, and that God expects something of us.
The festivities also raise money for charity. Every person expected to give $5 to be distributed to the needy.
It's a religious celebration where people think about the poor and help the needy.
And after the biggest single religious gathering in Australia, with stomachs rumbling, it was time to feast.
After we all pray, we all walk around and say "Que l'Eid entre means happy Eid.
Now it's time to go and party with our friends and family and enjoy the day.
Anita Clark, 10 News.
On a much sadder note, overseas and the latest from Kosovo, Yugoslavia has blocked an international inquiry into the massacre of ethnic Albanians. The United Nations is horrified by the tough stand, saying it is essential an inquiry goes ahead. Soldiers rounded up village people in Ratchek and herded them to a hillside slaughter. Parts of the southern United States are a scene of devastation tonight. In the wake of deadly twisters, 8 people are dead, 10 are missing, dozens injured. Tornadoes tore through Tennessee, destroying everything in their path.
America's Bible Belt rocked from the heavens. Large areas of the South hit, Jackson, Tennessee copping the worst.
I lost everything but my life. I lost my home. I lost a sister-in-law. I mean, it happened so fast.
At least 60 homes have been destroyed, many businesses ruined as winds of up to 250 kilometres per hour blasted a frightening path.
Everything's gone.
A motorist seeking shelter at a fire station, trapped and terrified.
The car was picked up and he was thrown around in it, and then he actually tried to drive to the station. He got in, but the tornado was pulling on him and he was strapped in the seat.
A shopping centre left a battle zone, trucks flipped over, a van hurled 200 metres across a car park and into a bridge. Locals finding shelter wherever possible.
I was underneath the sink holding on with one arm like this, and then I seen the sheetrock crack, and then the wall just disappeared.
And I was wondering, am I going to live? But I was like, God, let us live, and he did.
It'll cost millions to repair and replace the damage. Vice President Al Gore will visit this battered part of his home state soon. Relief aid now a top priority. The people of Jackson left searching for any belongings spared and fearful of a mounting death toll. Andrew Bell, 10 News.
A rescue mission after a bus crash has turned to disaster. At least 10 people died when a bus plunged off a bridge in Argentina. A crane was called in to pull the wreckage out of the water, but the weight of the vehicle and the water inside it were too much for the crane. The crane driver leapt clear before it toppled off the bridge. A mysterious China bus blast has injured 37 passengers. The bus blew up in Changsha in Hunan province. Some of the injured are fighting for their lives. No one has been able to pinpoint the cause of the explosion. A controversial execution has been given the go-ahead in Manila. Judges have ruled that a child rapist will be given a lethal injection, the Philippines' first execution in 23 years. The death row convict was given a reprieve a fortnight ago, but tonight that has been overruled. Lucille McLaughlin, the nurse once jailed over the murder of an Australian colleague in Saudi Arabia, has been sentenced for theft and fraud. She has been ordered to do community service after swiping almost $1,000 from a dying patient. Security cameras caught McLaughlin red-handed, taking the cash from the victim's bank account. A bizarre twist in the divorce battle between rock star Mick Jagger and Jerry Hall. Mick Jagger's lawyers say the pair were never married, but would not elaborate. Jilted Jerry Hall will settle for $40 million. The latest report from the hospital bedside of Russian President Boris Yeltsin is he is feeling better. He has been treated for a serious ulcer complaint. The president is under doctor's orders to give up most of his duties until he has fully recovered, and that could take weeks. Down-to-earth claims are being made about the failed Australian-United States venture to fly a balloon non-stop around the world. Those in the know say the project was doomed from the start.
After 20 failed attempts, Team Remax packed up last week, blaming the weather for deflating their round-the-world ambitions.
We got some variable winds out there, and it's just a knot or two over the max, and we're going to have to pull them back in today. Yeah, it's tough.
However, there are now suggestions there was more behind the failed mission. Astronomical researchers at the Defence Academy in Canberra have launched their scientific gondolas from Alice Springs for the last 20 years.
And we've had about 100 balloon flights from there. And a lot of the balloon flights have been with gondolas about the same size as the Remax gondola, or even larger.
The ADFA researcher is adamant it was basic oversights which grounded the combined American-Australian attempt.
The gondola was too wide in places, and there was a real danger of it either hitting the launch crane or the ground on takeoff. So that was the second problem. The third problem was that they had too much weight on the balloon.
So it's unlikely the 300-metre balloon would have made it through the band of minus 80 degrees, which occurs at 20 kilometres above the ground. And finally, if the team had become airborne, their return to Earth in a gondola under parachute would have posed a serious problem. The impact speed would have been an estimated 40 metres per second, and they would have suffered serious personal injury.
And they're thorough professionals in the field, but unfortunately their field is not stratospheric ballooning, and that is where the knowledge certainly was lacking.
The ADFA scientists have offered their support for when Team Remax returns at the end of this year. Kirsty Bozeman, 10 News.
A monster fish has leapt into the life of 3 Melbourne men and turned them into star anglers. The catch of the day from Port Phillip Bay was this, a 25-kilogram jewfish, believed to be the biggest the bay has ever served up. The dilemma, though, do they throw it in the pan or mount it on the wall? In a moment, the crucial guide to avoiding dodgy child carers. Also tonight, the gutsy granny who sent bungling bandits packing.
Cracking him. Every time he moved, I gave him another crack.
And in sports tonight, Jelena Dokic starts her Grand Slam career on a high. Police are investigating an incident in which controversial Queensland One Nation MP Jack Paff ran a red light. The traffic branch today viewed news video of his driving. As reporters tried to question the MP yesterday, he ignored a red light. Police are seeking witnesses to the episode. He is now facing growing pressure to resign from a key parliamentary committee. A grandmother has told how she took on 2 home invaders. Wielding a walking stick and true grit, she sent them scurrying empty-handed.
Mervyn and Catherine Thomas, both 87, were asleep when just after midnight they were woken by 2 men flashing torches at them.
He was wanting money all the time. Money, money, money they wanted. We said we didn't have any.
One of the men took Mr. Thomas into a nearby room and emptied a chest of drawers. The other faced the fury of Mrs. Thomas. The grandmother, who's bedridden with a bad heart and osteoporosis, managed to get up and attack the other bandit with a walking stick.
Oh, I had a like this, and I kept going like this with him all the time. Cracking him. Every time he moved, I gave him another crack.
I got a surprise to see her jump out of bed, grab the walking stick and belt him.
I bet he's got some sore spots today.
And while Mrs. Thomas can talk about it with a smile, the ordeal was horrifying.
It was scary. Yes, very frightening. I couldn't sleep all night. I haven't been to sleep yet.
The 2 bandits jumped a back fence and broke through the back door before terrorising Mr. and Mrs. Thomas for over half an hour. They then smashed through another locked door, cut the phone lines, disabling a personal alarm, and damaged Mrs. Thomas's ventilator. The burglars, both using handkerchiefs to disguise their faces, eventually fled empty-handed. Adrienne Rochella, 10 News.
Discoveries into an Australian skin blight are offering hope to thousands. Doctors have found that many victims of scleroderma have been exposed to chemicals in the mining and plastics industries, and these chemicals are often found in the home. Researchers hope that by putting 2 and 2 together, relief will be on the way. It is every parent's nightmare, hiring the wrong nanny. In this special report, we look into who to trust and what help is available.
The so-called nanny case in London has sounded warning bells worldwide. Parents often need outside help in minding the baby, but who to trust?
Parents have to be very careful in the selection process that they don't put an ad in a private newspaper, that they're not putting themselves at risk.
Aspiring nannies are taught at reputable nanny schools how to cope with screaming babies. But not even the best training can always prepare girls for every possible situation.
We can't prevent a tragedy. All we can do is ensure that the girls are properly trained, that they're carefully selected, and that they know what to do in a situation where a baby is constantly crying.
A baby compounds the stresses of modern living for most parents. For those barely coping, help is at hand Australia-wide at family care centres.
The centre provides me with an opportunity to get some rest and for my baby to form a routine.
The Tresillian centres offer parents of young babies practical help, education and advice.
The best advice is to put the baby safely in its cot, walk away, have a drink and come back in about 5 minutes and try again.
Shaken baby syndrome has become a well-recognised problem, prompting an Australia-wide campaign with one simple message: don't shake the baby. Col Allison, 10 News.
In finance news, the Australian share market gained ground today, the benchmark All Ordinaries Index closing 25 points stronger. Telstra shrugged off demands to cut prices, ending the day 20 cents up. Woolies added 7 cents, as did the TAB, it climbed 1. Among the banks, NAB jumped 58 cents, Commonwealth 25, Westpac rising 15. On the cross rates, the Australian dollar is tonight fetching 63.31 cents US, 38.38 pence, 72.65 yen, 54.73 euro. Gold closed locally at $286.70 US an ounce. London's FT100 share index is 63 points weaker in early trade. Hong Kong's market lost 112 points, Tokyo's Nikkei index 35. Another bizarre twist in the riddle of the Marree Man image, carved into the desert in South Australia's far north. A plaque dedicated to the original Aboriginal inhabitants of the area has been unearthed next to it. An anonymous message to the media says clues to who is responsible for the Marree Man and how it was carved are sealed in containers near two primitive figures in the English countryside. Next up, the National Weather Report, and then Sports Tonight with Tim Webster.
Sandra, thank you. Ahead in the show, all the highlights from day 2 of the Australian Open, of course. England and Sri Lanka in the cricket, cycling's tour down under, and on top of the world, Ian Thorpe wins again.
World speed, and he goes into something 1:45.71.
Now the national weather picture and the latest satellite photo shows cloud in the north has weakened, but thunderstorms are visible over the Kimberley and Gulf regions. Cloud stretches from Western Australia to the southeast. Tomorrow a high will move through the Bight, while the trough extends from the northwest of New South Wales to central parts, and a frontal system passes in the south. So looking ahead, mostly fine in Cairns, a shower and late storm for Townsville, mostly fine in Brisbane, showers in Sydney, cloudy in Canberra, fine in Melbourne, Hobart, Adelaide and Perth, showers in Darwin, mainly fine in Alice Springs. And that is the latest news to this minute. Our next national bulletin is coming along at 11:30 in the morning. Hope you can stay around now for Sports Tonight with Tim Webster. I'm Sandra Sully from the Late News team. Thanks for your company. Good morning.